चंद्रजिनी वदन ज्वाला
Jai
Prabhupada Jaya Srila Prabhupada Nrsimhadev Bhagwan Ki Prahlad Maharaj Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Jaya Jaya.
Okay, now here I'm presenting something from my god brother's book. My god brother is Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhu, disciple of Prabhupada, and he lives in Vrindavan. And he's also a very good artist, and he's put together one book. And this is just one page, and I put it into a slide. And let me just read this so that we can go over it. I need to move this in order to make this work. Okay. So, Gaur Govinda Swami shared a very confidential conversation with a few of his godbrothers, how once Lord Shiva asked Srila Prabhupada that he had been traveling all over the world preaching, but had never visited Bhuvaneshwar. And Bhuvaneshwar is known to be the initial place of the Bhagavatam recitation. Lord Shiva instructed Srila Prabhupada to come and stay in Bhuvaneshwar and work on the Bhagavatam. And Srila Prabhupada accepted the order from Lord Shiva and visited Bhuvaneshwar in January 1977. So this is a fascinating little piece of information that a lot of devotees are not aware of. I'm sharing it tonight. This is Shiva Ratri. Somehow or other, Prabhupada had some kind of a vision or communication with Lord Shiva, where Lord Shiva is inviting Prabhupada to go to Bhuvaneshwar. And why Bhuvaneshwar? Bhuvaneshwar, it says here, is the place known to be the initial place of the Bhagavatam recitation. Now, some devotees don't know this. And again, I'll be going over this, I guess. I'll have to explain some things that are not so well known. And I'll explain this little story without spending too much time. The Bhagavatam was first spoken by Lord Shiva to Parvati under a mango tree in Bhubaneswar. And it's described that at that time, there was a parrot. It's actually Radharani's parrot came and actually was listening to the recitation of the Bhagavatam, Shiva to Parvati. Now, in that recitation, as it sometimes happens, even in ISKCON temples, devotees want to get to the nectar of the Bhagavatam, and as Shiva is going through the various cantos, Parvati's waiting for, she wants to go to the 10th canto and get to the real essence of the Bhagavatam Katha. And in the process of just waiting and listening to the Bhagavatam being spoken by Lord Shiva, she started nodding out. She started sleeping. But the parrot that was in the tree, actually, this is a very important parrot. It's Radharani's parrot. And this parrot was listening in on the recitation. And Lord Shiva was basically in a trance, going into his samadhi trance, meditating on Krishna and the Bhagavatam. And he was not even aware so much of what was happening, that Parvati was nodding out. But the parrot was basically going, as Parvati was prior, doing like that. So Lord Shiva kept on reciting the Bhagavatam, not knowing even that Parvati had fallen asleep. So at a certain point, Shiva realizes what's going on. He starts chasing the parrot because the parrot he didn't think was qualified to actually hear the Bhagavatam. And he didn't want the parrot to repeat what he had heard. So the story goes, he chased the parrot all the way to the Himalayas to where Vyasadeva was. And the parrot, and this parrot's name is Shuka, so you may know where I'm going with this. The parrot, Shuka, flew into the mouth of the wife of Vyasadeva, somehow or other made it into the womb of Vyasadeva, and that parrot became born as Shukadev, the actual reciter of the Bhagavatam. So that story is there in one of the Puranas. It's an interesting story, but the issue is the first recitation of the Bhagavatam is in Bhubaneswar, Shiva to Parvati. Okay? So how do I... Okay, let me go to the next slide then. Oh, here's a slide given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, is a quote from him, that, and let me just read it. In the consideration of pure Vaishnavas, Sri Bhubaneswar Shambhu is most dear to Krishna and is therefore non-different from Krishna. The Rupa Nuga Vaishnavas consider Sri Bhubaneswar Lingaraj to be the form of Sri Gopalini Shakti and pray to him for the service of the divine young couple, Sri Radha Govinda.
Apologies, Ramatuk Prabhu, we can't see the slide.
You can't see the slide? No. Okay, why not? What happened?
Screen share, please.
I did screen share. Where do I go to screen share? Hare Krishna. Oh, there it is. Excuse me for this. Screen share again. Okay, now you're able to see a slide now. Let me put on the slide. Let me do it this way. I'm going to do it differently. Go like this. Oh, oops. If I can make it big. Okay, let me just do it this way. Oh, it's not big though.
I think we can see the full, you need to go on the presentation mode.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. There it goes.
Yes, that's good. Thank
Okay,
you.
but if I'm in the presentation mode, then how do I stop sharing or go to, I just go to the next slide? It'll
Yes,
be okay.
just keep the slideshow.
I'll
on.
just keep a slideshow.
Thank you.
Okay, and you'll see me talking down here.
Yes, on the gallery panel.
So that'll be okay. That would be okay. We'll work it out. So this is an interesting point where Bhaktisiddhanta was talking about the significance of Lingaraj in Bhuvaneshwar. And I'm going to be talking about Lingaraj and Bhuvaneshwar and making that connection to Vrindavan, actually. So Lingaraj, he is a very special deity. In India, many of you know that there's 12 Jyotirlingams, very special temples in India, considered to be the main temples to Lord Shiva. And on Shivaratri, hundreds of thousands of people go to have darshans at these Lingaraj, the Jyotirlingam temples. Now, you would think that Lingaraj in Bhuvaneshwar is one of those Jyotirlingams, but he's not. He's Lingaraj. Lingaraj, meaning he's the king of all the lingos. So he has a very special place in the hierarchy of Lord Shiva in India. So today's Shivaratri, we're going to focus on Lingaraj, the king of lingas. So who is this Lingaraj? He is actually connected in a very interesting way to Chaitanya Vaishnavism. Not only is he the Shiva deity that is manifest to be the Dikpala or protector for Jagannath Puri, he was the Shiva deity or the deity that represents Shiva that spoke the Bhagavatam, and he is considered to be half Shiva and half Vishnu. It's called Harihara. Hari is Vishnu, Hara is Shiva. And that connects to another conception that we've all heard about in Krishna consciousness, but sometimes it causes a lot of confusion, and that's related to who is Advaita Acharya. Advaita Acharya, we know, is Sadashiva. Now, Sadashiva, it was explained this morning very nicely, but just kind of a brief introduction to who is Sadashiva. This is the original Shiva. This is the Shiva in the spiritual world, the Shiva from which all other Shivas manifest. So Lingaraj is Sadashiva, Harihara combination, which makes him basically equal to Advaita Acharya. These are special manifestations of Shiva. And it was Advaita Acharya as Sadashiva in his compassion who invited Lord Chaitanya to come to the mature world and introduce the Yuga Dharma of the age. So, we see how Shiva is making these connections now in relationship to Krishna Bhakti. Specifically, Sadashiva, Lingaraj is Harihara, and also we'll see now, I'll go to the next slide. Now, this is a slide of a well-known prayer that is in honor and glorification of Gopeshwar Mahadev in Vrindavan. Now, the connection to Lingaraj in Bhuvaneshwar is fascinating because when Bhaktisiddhanta came to Bhuvaneshwar in 1922, as soon as he got off the train, it was there in Bhuvaneshwar, he chanted this prayer. And when he went to the Lingaraj temple, he chanted this prayer. But this prayer is not to Lingaraj. The prayer is to Gopeshwar Mahadev in Vrindavan. But although I don't have any reference material, I'm sure Bhaktisiddhanta understood that connection, that Gopeshwar Mahadev in Vrindavan is Sadashiva, actually Sadashiva. Lingaraj in Bhuvaneshwar is Sadashiva. Advaita Acharya is Sadashiva. In fact, in Vrindavan, on the appearance day of Advaita Acharya, all the sadhus and pandas and Matajis, living the Brajabasis, they like to visit the Gopishwar Mahadev temple on Advaita Prabhu's appearance day, Advaita Acharya's appearance day, because they know that connection. They know Gopishwar Mahadev is Sadashiva. And Sadashiva, properly understood, is not Shiva, it's Vishnu. Shiva Tattva is very complex, and I'm going to make it complex, but what can I do? It is what it is. Generally, devotees are taught to separate this understanding of Vishnu Tattva and Shiva Tattva, Vishnu and Shiva. We understand they're similar, but it's the analogy of milk and yogurt. It's the analogy of Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference. So generally we understand Shiva that way. But when it comes to Sadashiva or Harihara, there's no difference. That particular aspect of Shiva is non-different from Vishnu. But it gets confusing because we see, like devotees who have been to Vrindavan, you go there and you go for a darshan of Gopishwar Mahadev, and it's a Shiva lingam. It looks like Shiva. Or you go to Lingaraj in Bhuvaneshwar, it's a Shiva lingam. It doesn't look like Vishnu, but it is. That's the distinction that devotees need to try and understand, this distinction between Sadashiva from regular Shiva, you could say, or Rudra, the expansions in the material world. Sadashiva is the same as Vishnu. And later on, if I have time, I'm going to get into another manifestation of Sadashiva that Prabhupada describes. It's also relevant, but in a different way. And that is the Shiva from the Bhagavatam pastime of the churning of the milk ocean. And everyone is waiting for the nectar, but the first thing that comes out is not nectar, but poison. And then everyone goes to Vishnu. What do we do now? There's poison everywhere. It's threatening the whole universe. And Lord Vishnu said, no, you just ask Shiva. He'll take care of it. Now that specific Shiva in that Leela pastime, Prabhupada explains in the purport in the Bhagavatam, that same Shiva, that Shiva is Sadashiva also. It's Sadashiva. Again, it's complicated. We see pictures of Lord Shiva, taking the poison and drinking it. Devotee artists have made pictures of this for the Bhagavatam. But the key thing is if you understand him as Sadashiva, even though it looks like Shiva, it's absolutely 100% non-different from Vishnu. So, back to this verse, Vrindavana Vinipate Jaya Soma Soma Mole Sanaka Sanandana Sanatana Naradeja Gopishvara Vrajavilasi Yugangri Padme Prema Yayacha Nirupari Nama Namaste. And the translation is, O gatekeeper of Vrindavan, O Soma, all glories unto you. O you, whose forehead is decorated with the moon and who is worshipable by Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, Narada, and other great sages, O Gopishwar Mahadev, desiring that you bestow upon me divine love for the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Govinda, who performs joyous pastimes in Vrajadam, I offer my respects to you again and again. So, this Gopishwar Mahadev deity in Vrindavan, Prabhupada mentions him twice in his purports to the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada didn't emphasize this deity, but as the decades go on, as years and decades go on after Prabhupada's demise, we're realizing that just how important this Gopishwar Mahadev temple is and the deity is. He's the Dikpala. He allows access into Vrindavan. And actually, Rupa Goswami gives another instruction in his book. It's called Mathura Mahatmya. And if any devotees out there are going to Vrindavan and want to follow this instruction, I think it's very practical too. That first, even before going to Vrindavan, there's a temple in Mathura called Bhuteshwar Mahadev. These are ancient deities of Lord Shiva, said to have been established by Vrajanab, the great-grandson of Krishna. So they go back thousands of years, 5,000 years. So the idea is you go to Bhuteshwar Mahadev first in Mathura. He basically frees you from all your sins and mentalities that will block you from actually entering into Vrindavan in a correct mood. Then once entering Vrindavan, you offer your respects to Gopeshwar Mahadev. You pray to actually achieve the proper Vraja mood. You pray, this is actually how devotees should pray to Gopeshwar Mahadev or Shiva in general, to advance in Krishna Prema. Just like tonight's Shiva Ratri, we're asking Lord Shiva, please help us advance in our Krishna Bhakti. But specifically in Vrindavan, that Gopeshwar Mahadev functions in a certain way. We all know that Shiva's a destroyer. And we sometimes think, oh, he's waiting around for the end of the universe so he can destroy the universe. Well, certainly that's one function. But for the devotees, he's a destroyer of three basic things, and we can pray for him to destroy these things for us. And those are material desires. Material desires and Krishna Bhakti don't go well together. He's the destroyer of ignorance. Actually, Shiva Mahadev or Gopeshwar Mahadev, he's acting as a Vaishnava guru. So he'll destroy our ignorance. Om Agyan Timirandasha. And even more importantly, Prabhupada explains in another purport in the Bhagavatam, Shiva Mahadev is the destroyer of ahankara, or false ego. So this is how he functions. And if you actually have this right mentality and intent in entering Vrindavan, you'll be able to actually connect with the Vrajamuda Bhakti. Your realizations will become more profound. And it's all through the agency of Lord Shiva. And if you don't make that connection with Lord Shiva, then it's basically, you're in Vrindavan, you're in the Holy Dham, but you're there like a tourist. You're there, but you're not there. So these are some interesting things. So this prayer, let me get back to this prayer. Why is Bhaktisiddhanta chanting this prayer to Gopeshwar Mahadev when he's visiting Lingaraj in Bhuvaneshwara? He's making that connection. Lingaraj and Gopeshwar Mahadev, they're the same. It's the same function, it's the same personality, it's the same deity, and ultimately you can make the connection because it's Sadashiva, it's the same as Advaita Acharya. So, Lingaraj temple in Bhuvaneshwar, and this is what I'm going to be talking about. This is going to be the main focus of my discussion, is when Mahaprabhu went to this Lingaraj temple, what happened? We already got some inclination that Prabhupada had a unique relationship with Lingaraj. Bhaktisiddhanta also had a unique relationship with Lingaraj. And this ultimately comes from Mahaprabhu's connection with Lingaraj. Let me just read this quickly from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya-lila 9:360. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally visited temples in various holy places. Wherever he visited, he immediately exhibited his ecstatic love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a Vaishnava visits the temple of a demigod, his vision of that demigod is different from the vision of the impersonalists and Mayavadis. The Brahma Samhita supports this. A Vaishnava's visit to the temple of Lord Shiva, now I can't see it, I have to move it, for example, is different from a non-devotee's visit. So Lord Chaitanya set a certain example. Yes, you can visit temples of Lord Shiva, especially prominent temples in India, but the mentality has to be different. So here we have Lord Chaitanya at Lingaraj. Now at Lingaraj, there's a certain phenomenon that happened that's practically unprecedented. And in my research and trying to understand Lord Shiva in relationship to Krishna Bhakti. I've been trying to understand this and what Prabhupada said about this. And that is that at the Lingaraj temple, Lord Chaitanya, in his darshan of Lingaraj and meditating on the importance of Lingaraj as Harihara and the first recitation of the Bhagavatam and as a Dikpala for Jagannath. In other words, Lord Chaitanya was on his way to have darshan of Jagannath, but first you have to get that permission of Lord Shiva. And he's meditating on all this, and he goes into these, how can you really describe it? Transcendental ecstasies, dancing and chanting in front of Lingaraj. And he has with him one of his assistants. His name is Murari Gupta. And Lord Chaitanya spontaneously recites 8 prayers in glorification of Lord Shiva. 8 prayers. And it's called the Shivastakam. Now, some of you may have heard of Shivastakam. When I talk to devotees about it, most devotees have not heard. Shivastakam was published 12 years ago in Back to Godhead magazine, but there was not a lot of information on what it is, these 8 prayers of Lord Shiva. We're all aware of Shikshastakam, the prayers of Lord Chaitanya, Shikshastakam, but there's another set of prayers. Now, Lord Chaitanya did not write it. He recited it spontaneously in his ecstatic mood. And because Murari Gupta was there, and Murari Gupta was an Ayurvedic physician, and he was an assistant to Lord Chaitanya. We'll talk about him a little bit more. But what happened was Murari Gupta, as Lord Chaitanya was singing or reciting these prayers, Murari Gupta was recording them in his journal. He had a diary. And it's that diary that's one of the main sources of information, actually, for Chaitanya Charitamrita. But here's this thing that I cannot answer, and I've asked this question to many devotees. Why is it that Srila Prabhupada never introduced us to the Shivastakam prayers of Lord Chaitanya? I don't have an answer for that. But in my research, nowhere in Prabhupada's books, in his lectures, in his room conversations, morning walks, can't find it anywhere where Prabhupada even mentions it. Yet, it is an important part of our Chaitanya Vaishnava history. It happened. It is history. It is there recorded in Murari Gupta's diary. So who's Murari Gupta? As an incarnation of Hanuman, Murari Gupta is as dear to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Hanuman is to Lord Ramchandra. Born into a lineage of Ayurvedic doctors, Murari Gupta followed that profession, but because of his elevated spiritual potencies, he also cured the spiritual diseases of his patients along with their physical ailments. Murari Gupta pleased Gauranga with melodious chanting of the Bhagavata. So Murari Gupta is a very confidential devotee of Lord Chaitanya. But what's interesting, he was a Ram Bhakta. Murari Gupta, in his internal identity, in his intrinsic identity, is Hanuman manifesting in Chaitanya Leela. Hanuman manifesting in Chaitanya Leela. And just as Hanuman is the best devotee of Ramchandra, in one sense, Hanuman is the best devotee of Chaitanya. It's a really interesting connection. And the intrinsic identity of Hanumanji is as the 11th Rudra, or Shiva. So I hope you're following this. I'm trying to connect the dots, so to speak. Who is Hanuman? He's actually Shiva. And that manifestation of Hanuman manifests in Chaitanya Leela as Murari Gupta. And Murari Gupta, confidential associate with Mahaprabhu, is traveling with him on his trip to have darshan of Jagannath. And he's there in the Lingaraj temple, and he's watching Lord Chaitanya go through these ecstasies and spontaneously chanting the Shivastakam prayers. That Murari Gupta is Shiva recording the Shivastakam. if that makes sense. Now, when I started like putting these dots together, it kind of like, it's just like, wow, this is really interesting. Why didn't Prabhupada cover this? Anyway, I don't have an answer for it. I've asked various senior devotees, gurus, sannyasis. No one's been able to satisfy me. So that remains a mystery. Certain things with Shiva Tattva are always going to be mysterious. That's just the way it is. Okay, now here's something also interesting. This is from a lecture in Srimad Bhagavatam in Los Angeles in 1974. Prabhupada says, Arjuna's chariot was with flag marked with a Hanumanji. So Arjuna kept upon him Vrajnangaji, Hanuman, because he considered Hanuman his guru. Now, again, I've done research in this. I've never found where Prabhupada said like that before, that Arjuna considered Hanuman to be his guru. We know from the Bhagavad Gita that Hanuman is there on the flag of Arjuna's chariot, and Prabhupada has amazing things about that, how it brought all auspiciousness and victory. But never heard this part where he says in this lecture that Hanuman is Arjuna's guru. So Arjuna's guru, you can make an inference, is Shiva. Hanumanji at the Bhaktivedanta Manor is Shiva. So sometimes the devotees, we think, oh, we're Krishna bhaktas, we're not Shiva bhaktas. But at Bhaktivedanta Manor, you've been worshipping Shiva for years, for decades, as Hanumanji. Here's another interesting purport I just wanted to put up here and discuss briefly from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto. One should worship the Rudra incarnations of Lord Shiva if he wants to be a great hero. So anyone who wants to be a hero, you want to be a superhero, well, go to Bhaktivedanta Manor and pray to Hanumanji, and he will make you a great hero. Why is that? Because he's actually Shiva. Okay, now I'm putting up a slide and a purport, making this connections that as Krishna devotees, yes, we're focusing on Krishna, Radha and Krishna, but we incorporate Ram Leela and Chaitanya Leela, and there's a specific form called Sadbhuj. Let me just read this quickly, and we'll go over this. So in Srimad Bhagavatam 5:19:8, purport is, okay, I'm just continuing a purport there. It says, all the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but especially Lord Ramchandra, Lord Krishna, and later Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, delivered many of the living entities present before them. Indeed, almost all of them. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is therefore represented in the sixth-armed form of Sadbhuj Murti, which is a combination of Lord Ramchandra, Lord Krishna, and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The best purpose of human life can be fulfilled by worshipping the Sadbhuj Murti, the form of the Lord with 6 arms, 2 arms of Ramchandra, 2 arms of Krishna, and 2 arms of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, I'm putting this up here simply to make this connection, is what I'm doing with Ram Leela at the Bhuvaneshwar Lingaraj temple, because Marai Gupta is Hanuman serving his dearmost Ramchandra as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Leela. And that's where all these amazing things happen, there at Lingaraj. Okay, now, let me just read this and I'll explain it why I have it here. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness now has its World Center in Navadvip, Mayapur. The managers of this center should see that 24 hours a day, there is chanting of the holy names of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, with the addition, Hari Haraya Nama Krishna, Yadavaya Namaha. For this song was a favorite of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that's coming from the Adi Leela Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is that after these ecstatic experiences of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Marai Gupta recording the Shivastakam, well, they still have to go to Jagannath Puri. So the road going to Puri, I'm not sure, it's 30 kilometers. It's a ways off. On that road going to Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu is chanting and dancing. He's just had the darshan of Lingaraj. Now he's going to have the darshan of Jagannath, and he's chanting, Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. So Hari Haraya Nama Krishna. Hari Hara. Hari Hara. This is referring to Lingaraj. Hari Hara. Hari Hara, you could say, is actually a name of Vishnu, of Krishna. Hari Hara. So as Mahaprabhu just left Lingaraj having the darshan of Lingaraj, who is Hari Hara, half Shiva, half Vishnu, then he's chanting Hari Haraya Nama Krishna. And Prabhupada says this mantra should also be chanted in Mayapur. Of course, we chant it, everywhere. It's such a wonderful prayer and song. But specifically, chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, chanting of Hari Haraya Nama Krishna, they go together. And part of that inspiration came from this experience at Lingaraj. Okay, this is my last slide. This is a little off this story of Lingaraj, the exclusive pastimes of Lord Shiva. I'm giving this information because there's so many pastimes of Lord Shiva. This is one of the famous ones in the Bhagavatam, the 8th canto. So the story of Lord Shiva drinking poison from the churning of the milk ocean is part of a much larger narrative from the Srimad Bhagavatam 8th canto, 7th chapter. The demigods and the asuras work conjointly to produce the nectar of immortality, but the very first thing that manifests was intense poison that threatened all of humanity. So this poison, I want to bring this up because this form of Shiva, of drinking the poison from the ocean, I mentioned this briefly, he's also Sadashiva. So these Sadashiva connections are special. Try and learn how to make the distinction Sadashiva and regular Shiva. So the Shiva that drinks the ocean of poison, it's Vishnu. Sure looks like Shiva, but it's Vishnu. The Shiva at Lingaraj, that's Sadashiva, Vishnu. The Shiva that's at Gopishwar Mahadev in Vrindavan, Sadashiva. The Dvaita Acharya, also Sadashiva, the original Shiva. So the reason I'm bringing this up is to make the connection that many times devotees, they have this projection on Shiva Mahadev as a Mayavadi, basically. And why is that? Because Shiva Mahadev manifests or advented or became Shankaracharya, and we know Shankaracharya taught Advaita Vedanta all over India, and it was the influence that was established by Shankaracharya that Ramanujacharya had to come, Madhvacharya had to come. Eventually, it led the way for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to establish the teachings of Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva. Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva, inconceivably, simultaneously oneness and difference. And that is the quintessential essence of the progression of Indian theological, philosophical thought culminates in Lord Chaitanya. So, this manifestation of Shiva drinking the poison is symbolic of drinking the poison of Mayavad conceptions and Mayavad philosophy. And that's related to in another story in the Bhagavatam with Putana, the witch. Putana came to kill Krishna by Kamsa, and how did she do it? She smeared poison on her breast. And it's explained by our acharyas that Putana is symbolizing the false guru, the Mayavadi guru, who basically says, yes, you can worship Krishna, but ultimately we want to kill Krishna and become Krishna. This is Mayavad. So the symbolism of Shiva drinking this poison from the milk ocean, we don't want the poison, we want the nectar, the Amrit. So the nectar is Krishna Bhakti, service to Krishna. The poison is Mayavad concepts. So many followers of Shiva, devotees of Shiva, Shaivites, they're contaminated with this Mayavad poison. And it's up to us as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to clarify that with them. We have to be clear ourselves and then clarify it with others that actually Lord Shiva is a Vaishnava. Lord Shiva is meditating on Sankarshan. Ultimately, Lord Shiva is meditating on Radha and Krishna. Ultimately, Lord Shiva is meditating on Radharani. Now, how can I say that? There's a certain prayer in Vrindavan, the Brajabasis sing it. Again, Prabhupada didn't talk about it, but it's there. It's part of Vrindavan culture. Now, this prayer is sometimes even said to be the national anthem of Vrindavan, so to speak. It is sometimes described as the heart of Vrindavan, and it's called the Radha Kripa Kataksha Stotram. And these are prayers chanted by Lord Shiva to Parvati. Again, Shiva to Parvati, this connection, Shiva to Parvati, is very powerful. And it's prayers in glorification of Radharani and getting the merciful glance of Radharani so we can advance in our devotion to Krishna, ultimately Radha and Krishna. So Lord Shiva, he is the topmost Vaishnava. He teaches all levels of Krishna bhakti. But we have to understand him as a Vaishnava and not see him as a Mayavadi or someone who promotes. He's confusing. Lord Shiva is full of paradoxes and contradictions, not easily understood, full of mysteries. Even with what I'm telling you tonight, there's lots of mysteries. I cannot tell you why Prabhupada didn't cover some of this material, but he didn't. It's part of our Vaishnava heritage. It's part of our Chaitanya Vaishnava heritage. So I think I've said enough. I hope I've stimulated some of your thinking processes and hope there's some interesting questions that we'll try and stick to the points I'm discussing tonight, although there's all kinds of questions when it comes to Shiva Tattva and Lord Shiva and how that relates to Krishna Bhakti. So, okay. Madhva, or whoever's sponsoring, if we can just open it up now for questions and answers, I think it's fine.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ramata Prabhu, for taking us through that really inspiring, journey of really.
It's a journey. Yeah, it was a journey on Shiva Ratri. I hope I didn't lose everyone because it's difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot to capture here, but we have some questions.
Yes,
quite a few questions actually.
Questions and answers.
And please do keep them coming through as well, either to myself or to Snehal Prabhu. So I'll start off with one question that was asked about, I think you mentioned it in the first few slides. The question was, thank you so much for all these wonderful pastimes. And in specific to this question is they're referring to the parrot pastime that you mentioned to have happened in Bhubaneswar. And they've understood that this has also happened in Kedarnath. How do we reconcile the different accounts?
It also happened what? Say it again.
In Kedarnath.
I don't know about the Kedarnath. What also happened? The reciting of the
pastime that you mentioned about Shukar.
I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
I'll let that person rephrase that question. Okay, so this question is quite long. The next one is a 3-part question.
Okay.
I'll ask in bits. I'll ask in bits.
I'm not a scholar, not an expert, but I have been studying these things. I've had my own personal kind of, interactions with Shiva, you could say. So it's kind of driven me to find out more what Prabhupada has said, what the Vaishnavacharyas have said, but I'm not an expert. I'm still learning. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so the first part of the question is that in the Vayu Purana, there is a description of Sadashiva in one of the Vaikuntha planets. That Sadashiva is a direct expansion of Lord Krishna's form for pastimes. It is said that Sadashiva, Lord Shambhu...
For pastimes. Yeah, go ahead.
...is an expansion from the Sadashiva in the Vaikuntha planets, Lord Vishnu himself, and that his consort, Mahamaya, is an expansion of Brahmadevi or Lakshmi.
Ramadevi.
It's Rama Devi. Rama
Yeah,
Devi.
the accent is on that last day. So distinction, not Rama Devi, Rama Devi.
Rama
Go ahead.
Devi.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And this is actually from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 679.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is that isn't the Sadashiva who looks like Shiva Shambhu, Sadashiva, as opposed to looking like Vishnu? Because we understand that there are two Sadashivas, the Sadashiva and Vaikuntha, who looks like a Vishnu Murti, and who has his own Vaikuntha planet, and then the Sadashiva, the Lord Shambhu, who is in his Mahesh Dham and looks like Lord Shiva.
Look, when I get back to Vaikuntha, I'll let you know the answer there. I'm sorry. These things are kind of like way over my head. But yeah, it's interesting thinking and interesting thoughts. Exactly how does he look like there as Sadashiva? The point I'm making, that when we go to Lingaraj or Gopesh Ramadev and look like a Shiva Lingam, in our consciousness we should be thinking, give it a little twist. Oh, it's actually Vishnu because it's Sadashiva. And when we see these pictures of Lord Shiva drinking the poison, looks like Shiva. Looks like any other Shiva picture I've seen. But actually, because Prabhupada says it's Sadashiva, again, it's kind of like we have to make this adjustment. It's not the milk yogurt analogy. It's actually Vishnu. Sure looks like Shiva, but it's Vishnu. What can I say? It's confusing. I know when I started contemplating, I was also like, what's going on here? Am I going crazy? But this is part of the mystery of Krishna consciousness, mystery of Shiva in relationship to Krishna consciousness. Ultimately, it's the relationship of Achintya Beta Beta Tattva in Lord Chaitanya and this whole philosophy of inconceivable oneness and difference that manifests certainly through this understanding of Shiva. It manifests through the understanding of Radha and Krishna, how Radha and Krishna are one and the same, yet they're different. We're one with Krishna, yet we're different. So this whole Achintya Beta Beta Tattva concept is also mystical. Achintya basically means mystical. Achintya means it can't really be easily understood. It's part of Achintya Shakti. And for devotees of Krishna, we have to accept that this energy of Krishna, this Achintya energy, is a difficult one to really grasp. We may never grasp it fully, but yet we're trying to. I'm trying to describe Shiva Tattva, knowing that who am I to describe something as advanced as Shiva Tattva? Srila Jiva Goswami, he says in one of his Sandarbhas, there's two tattvas. They're difficult for the devotees to understand. They're complex and just hard to grab hold of. And that is Shiva Tattva and Guru Tattva. And interestingly enough, Shiva Tattva, Guru Tattva are interrelated. I just gave you that one quote where Prabhupada says that Arjuna sees Hanuman as his guru, and Hanuman is Shiva. It's this interrelationship. Lord Shiva is the topmost Vaishnava. He acts as a guru. If we want him to, we can bring him into our lives and understanding as a guru. So, Guru Tattva, Shiva Tattva, they're interrelated. It's complex. It is what it is. I'm trying to delve into this. I'm trying to ask a lot of my god brothers, god sisters, anyone that I can talk to about these things who's also done research in this area. And it's an ongoing. I don't know what I want to say. It's a struggle or concern, but I think it's an area of interest that the devotee should try and understand better. That Shiva can help us advance in Krishna consciousness. How does that work? As Prabhupada said in the very beginning, that one quote, every devotee of Krishna is also a devotee of Shiva. Well, if we take that literally, we have to figure it out. How are we devotees of Shiva? What does it really mean to be a devotee of Shiva in relationship to Krishna? Just like now, I was actually having a little conversation with Neelamani about this, who gave the Bhagavatam class at the Manor this morning. It seems that there's an opening up to Shiva Ratri in ISKCON and to discussions of Lord Shiva in ISKCON. I see it as a progressive, positive thing. As devotees are maturing and understanding more and more what Prabhupada left us, the legacy Prabhupada left us, we see that we also have to accommodate Lord Shiva to some way, shape, or form. We're not saying how to do that, but it's like this is a part of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so okay, we still got plenty of time for questions and answers. Any other things? I hope
Sure.
I hope devotees have something to say, that I'm not the only one talking tonight. This is Shiva Ratri. Please say something in glorification of Lord Shiva.
Before, really enjoyed your class, actually, and so much that you had to share as well. The other question was, because it's Shivratri this evening, could you please say something about Lord Shiva's wedding, which is celebrated on this Mahashivratri? Is this connected to the pastime of Shiva Sati in, Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4?
Look, there's so much information about Lord Shiva there in various Puranas and so many references. I have a tendency basically to stick to Prabhupada's books and what other Vaishnava acharyas have said about Lord Shiva. So when it comes to the marriage of Lord Shiva, I know there are many Shaivites and other, people coming from an Indian background or Hindu background, if I want to use that word, that can know that much better than I do. And I know Shivaratri is supposed to be the celebration not only of the marriage of Shiva and Parvati, but I've also heard that it is somehow or other connected with the manifestation of Shiva, also like Shiva's birthday. And I've never really understood it, exactly how that works. I've never really fully understood about the Sati-Shiva connection and how, because Sati committed suicide and then she was reborn as Parvati, and Parvati committed, performed a lot of austerities to win over Lord Shiva as her husband. It's just one of those things that I need to do more research on. Perhaps someone who's listening tonight can say something that would be more clarifying than I can give in that regard. Anyone wants to say anything? We can try and make it interactive. Like I said, I don't want to be the only one talking. If someone wants to contribute, please do in answering that question.
I believe you can off-mute yourself if anybody did want to say anything.
Hello, Ramanath Sukhaji. Namaste. This is Siva Guru. On this auspicious occasion, am I allowed to recite 108 names of Shivaji? Please.
Perhaps, but let's wait for that. Okay, we got some time left here. Let's 108 names of Shivaji. There's so many ways. There's I could have recited all 8 prayers of Shivastakam, but I wanted to keep it short. I didn't want to get into all these.
Yeah, this hardly takes 2-3 minutes, to be honest.
Okay.
Om Sadravna. Om Krishnaya Namaha. Om Shivaya Namaha, Om Maheswaraya Namaha, Om Sambhave Namaha, Om Pinakine Namaha, Om Sasisekaraya Namaha, Om Vamadevaya Namaha, Om Virupakshaya Namaha, Om Kapardhine Namaha, Om Nilalohitaya Namaha, Om Sankaraya Namaha, Om Solapaniya Namaha, Om Kattvangine Namaha, Om Vishnulabhaya Namaha, Om Sipivistaya Namaha, Om Ambikanadhaya Namaha, Om Sri Kantaya Namaha, Om Bhaktavasalaya Namaha, Om Bhavaya Namaha, Om Sarvaya Namaha, Om Trilokeshaya Namaha, Om Sitikantaya Namaha, Om Sivapriyaya Namaha, Om Ugraya Namaha, Om Kapaline Namaha, Om Kaumarine Namaha, Om Andhakara Sudhana Namaha, Om Gangadharaya Namaha, Om Lavatakshaya Namaha, Om Kalakalaya Namaha, Om Krupanidhiye Namaha, Om Bhimaya Namaha, Om Parsastaya Namaha, Om Rugapanaya Namaha, Om Jatadharaya Namaha, Om Kailasavasine Namaha, Om Kavachane Namaha, Om Kathoraya Namaha, Om Tripurantakaya Namaha, Om Rushankaya Namaha, Om Vrishabharudhaya Namaha, Om Bhasmodulita Vigrahaya Namaha, Om Samapriyaya Namaha, Somapriyaya Namaha, ओम सर्वमयाय नमः। ओम त्रयमूर्तये नमः। ओम अनीश्वराय नमः। ओम सर्वज्ञाय नमः। ओम परमात्मने नमः। ओम सूर्याग्निलोचनाय नमः। ओम हविषे नमः। ओम यज्ञमयाय नमः। ओम सोमाय नमः। ओम पंचवक्षाय नमः। ओम सदाशिवाय नमः। ओम विश्वेश्वराय नमः। ओम वीरभद्राय नमः। ओम गणनाथाय नमः। ओम प्रजापतये नमः। ओम हिरण्यरेतसे नमः। ओम दुर्दर्शाय नमः। ओम गिरीशाय नमः। ओम गिरीशाय नमः। ओम नगाय नमः। ओम भुजंगभूषणाय नमः। ओम बाघाय नमः। ओम गिरिधन्वने नमः। ओम गिरिप्रियाय नमः। ओम कृत्युवासने नमः। ओम पुरारातये नमः। ओम भगवते नमः। ओम प्रमताल्पाय नमः। ओम मृत्युंजयाय नमः। ओम सूक्ष्मतनवे नमः। ओम जगद्व्यापिने नमः। ओम जगद्गुरवे नमः। ओम व्योमकेशाय नमः। ओम महासेनाय नमः। ओम चारु विक्रमाय नमः। ओम रुद्राय नमः। ओम भूतपतये नमः। ओम स्थाणवे नमः। ओम अहेद्युद्धाय नमः। ओम दिगंबराय नमः। ओम अष्टमूर्तये नमः। ओम अनेकात्मने नमः। ओम सात्विक